How heavy is an empire's gold? For 8 centuries, the Byzantine solidus was absolute perfection. It was the undisputed, hyper-stable reserve currency of the world. Yet, an expanding medieval frontier demanded a massive mercenary army. Emperor Constantine IX lacked the bullion to pay them. He quietly ordered the imperial mint to begin mixing cheap copper into gold. The illusion of endless imperial wealth was secretly financed by the systematic debasement of national trust. This microscopic chemical betrayal triggered an invisible, devastating economic collapse. Let us investigate the fatal counterfeiting of the Byzantine defense. The Byzantine defense was incredibly expensive. For centuries, local citizen soldiers protected the vast imperial borders. But the 11th century brought new, terrifying threats from abroad. The state rapidly dismantled its traditional, self-sustaining provincial agricultural militias. They replaced them with highly trained, professional foreign mercenary armies. Norman knights and Viking axemen demanded their exorbitant monthly wages in pure gold. The empire outsourced its physical survival to foreign swords, creating an insatiable, terrifying macroeconomic black hole. Mercenaries only fight for hard currency. The imperial treasury in Constantinople simply could not print paper. Emperor Constantine IX faced a completely depleted gold reserve. Taxes on the exhausted peasantry could not bridge the deficit. The emperor authorized a deeply secretive, mathematically disastrous metallurgical solution. He commanded the mint to systematically blend cheap base metals into the solidus. By deliberately diluting the sacred currency, the government covertly taxed the wealth of every living citizen. The solidus was a global standard. For 800 years, its weight and purity remained absolute. It was the reliable, unquestioned anchor of medieval international trade. Now, the glittering gold coins began acquiring a duller tint. The state rapidly struck thousands of newly debased, lighter coins. This invisible, quiet counterfeiting operation successfully paid the massive mercenary armies on time. The short-term military crisis was immediately solved by quietly bankrupting the long-term economic foundation of Byzantium. Markets always
To the
detect
victors
the
go the
counterfeit currency.
spoils.
The foreign
We have our
mercenaries spent
payment
their
at
wages
last.
in the local markets.
Cheers,
Astute
brothers.
Byzantine merchants immediately noticed the changed weight and color, and they quickly realized the imperial money had lost intrinsic value. To protect their profits, traders rapidly raised prices on everything. The sudden influx of cheapened coins unleashed a crippling wave of domestic hyperinflation. When the government secretly steals the value of money, the civilian population pays the immediate price. Bread became unaffordable for the poor. The hidden tax of debasement violently struck the capital city. Wages for ordinary laborers remained completely stagnant despite the inflation. Basic staples like grain and olive oil doubled in cost. The urban working class found themselves starving in the streets. Families were economically crushed to fund the salaries of distant foreign border guards. The invisible machinery of currency manipulation directly translates into the physical starvation of the home front. The state trapped its own people. Tax collectors demanded payments in the old, pure gold coins. Yet the government only paid internal debts using debased metal. This hypocritical policy aggressively stripped wealth from the provincial farmers. The once thriving Byzantine middle class was systematically and ruthlessly eradicated. Agricultural production plummeted as desperate peasants abandoned their heavily taxed, newly worthless lands. A thriving empire cannibalized its own domestic economic stability to project an illusion of military strength. Inflation destroys complex global supply chains. Foreign merchants began refusing the corrupted Byzantine coins at ports. International trade along the vital Silk Road abruptly shifted away. The empire's lucrative customs revenues began a steep, terrifying decline. The emperor's desperate trick had permanently shattered the financial ecosystem.
Take your
The mercenaries hired to protect the empire were now draining its absolute lifeblood. Economic gravity is absolute, and no empire can infinitely suspend the mathematical consequences of counterfeit money. The military ledger became mathematically impossible. The state required ever larger mercenary forces to maintain order. To afford them, the mint pushed the debasement even further. The percentage of actual gold dropped precipitously over the decades. A devastating, irreversible spiral of devaluation
They're breaking through.
had been
We must
firmly
reinforce
established.
the center.
But the
Look at
imperial
the table,
defense relied
General.
entirely
It cannot
on a
take the weight.
foundation
We are
of rapidly
doomed.
crumbling financial trust. When the core currency completely loses its integrity, the physical borders of the nation inevitably follow. The financial illusion finally shattered. The devastating tipping point arrived on the eastern Anatolian frontier. Hardened foreign mercenaries eagerly received their heavy chests of payment. They immediately tested the newly minted coins against their blades. The unusually soft copper content revealed the ultimate imperial betrayal. Warriors who bleed for massive profit absolutely refuse to die for cheap, counterfeit metal. The ultimate strategic failure occurs when the desperate state attempts to purchase survival with hollow, worthless promises. Mutiny is an economic transaction, when the furious mercenary commanders instantly broke their vital defensive contracts. They immediately abandoned their crucial posts along the threatened borders. Some heavily armed professional units even turned against the empire. They violently sacked the very provincial towns they once protected. The sudden evaporation of basic financial trust immediately dissolved the physical security of all Byzantium. A grand empire cannot successfully defend its borders when its own defenders violently reject the imperial currency. The battlefield exposed the ledger. Enemy invasion forces poured through the completely undefended eastern gaps. The weakened, disorganized Byzantine army faced catastrophic, unprecedented military defeat. At Manzikert, the ultimate bill of imperial debasement finally came due. The emperor was violently captured, and the vast
Mercenary
defensive
line
frontier
has completely
collapsed.
collapsed. We have a
Centuries of
catastrophic
glorious
breach at
military
Sector
supremacy
4.
were entirely undone by a hidden, microscopic metallurgical line. The rapid, terrifying collapse of Anatolia was never a military defeat, but a brutal macroeconomic foreclosure. Gold dictates the empire's borders. The once invincible Byzantine state permanently lost its most magnificent, wealthy provinces. This devastating loss of vital agricultural land exponentially worsened the crisis. It became a catastrophic, inescapable cycle of total economic ruin. A desperate government stubbornly minted even more completely worthless coins. The innocent civilian population starved while enemy empires ruthlessly carved up the remnants of a bankrupt superpower. The invisible, unbreakable sinews of war are forged exclusively in the absolute integrity of the mint. The generational debt of debasement, the permanent shattering of the Byzantine economic golden age resonates. It serves as a terrifying historical warning for modern times. The catastrophic loss of trust took centuries to finally rebuild. The invisible human cost of currency manipulation is paid by the poorest citizen. When a government secretly dilutes the foundational wealth of its people, the resulting generational trauma is inescapable. We still manipulate modern fiat currency. Today, central banks do not secretly mix copper into gold. Instead, they expand digital money supplies to fund massive deficits. The rapid inflation of the money supply mimics the medieval mint. As modern living costs soar, the working class finds their savings quietly eroded. The price of global power is always ultimately extracted from the civilian forced to consume the economic fallout. A strong defense requires transparent money. The Byzantine disaster proves that armies cannot operate on illusions. A resilient society ensures its currency retains absolute, undeniable integrity. We cannot build a sustainable future on a completely counterfeit foundation. The true measure of a civilization is the unyielding honesty of its money. History proves that whenever a state dilutes the truth of its resources, the empire will eventually fall.